One of the ideas so prevalent in photography these days is that a photograph should tell a story. And any of you that know me at all know that I get a little twitchy the moment we use the word should. But can a photograph tell a story? And if so, how? Let's talk about it.
I'm photographer David Duchemin, and this is Vision is Better, a sometimes weekly podcast about the craft and art of photography. Welcome here.
Today I want to talk about photographs and stories. I've seen a couple assertions recently, including one from my friend Dan, who sparked off some of the conversation about composition in episode 65. And those assertions say that photographs can't tell a story. So on one side, you've got people saying photographs must or should tell a story in order to be powerful. And on the other hand, you've got people saying it's not even possible to tell a story in a photograph. This is the kind of stuff that makes me drink. This is episode 66 of Vision is Better. Welcome here. We've been telling stories as a race since the moment we could. We've been described by some as the storytelling species. Stories matter to us. Story is how we find meaning or create meaning. We don't like things that don't make sense, so we tell stories in order to make sense of things. Stories are powerful to us because they hook us or can hook us emotionally. They give our imagination something to work on. Keep that in your brain a moment because I'm going to come back to it. First, let's get this out of the way. Do photographs have to tell a story? God, no. That's like saying everything we write down has to be a novel, which would rob us of poetry and nonfiction and some of history's great shopping lists. They all have a place, but a poem is not necessarily story. They're ideas and emotions, and they can connect deeply with us. So while stories have a special place for us, not everything has to be story. If you make photographs that are more impressionistic or abstract, there isn't likely to be a story there, though even there could be. Why not? So don't go off saying, Duchemin told you you had to make stories. Do your thing, story or otherwise. But story can be powerful. Story is profoundly powerful. So can photographs tell a story? I think that depends entirely on what you mean by words like tell and story. If you mean can one image tell a complete story from beginning to end, I'd say if it can, it's pretty damn hard. But what story is ever complete? And is telling the full story the point? Is that the only way a photograph can be powerful and tell a story? For some it is, and they use multiple images in a photo essay along with captions and story copy. For others, it is enough to imply story, to engage the imagination of the person reading that photograph and create story together. The question in the context of this conversation that is most interesting to me is this: what are the elements of story and how can we use them to make more powerful photographs, images that get our imaginations working and creating stories? This isn't going to be a full conversation. That would take hours. But I do want to hit on the main elements. I want to give you a sense of the possibilities. If you want more, consider getting my ebook, The Photographic Story, at craftandvision.com. Buy my book. I'll put a link in the show notes below. So what do stories have in common? On some level, all stories have character. Though that character doesn't necessarily have to be human, character matters because it gives us a place to anchor our empathy or a hook on which to hang our emotions or our curiosity, some way to get invested. Generally speaking, if you can put a character into an image, someone about whom I care, you have a better chance of hooking me emotionally. We're just wired that way. And the more you can hook me with choice of moment, for example, the stronger that emotional response will be. Stories happen in time and space, and while we have a harder time showing passage of time, it is possible, sense of place is easier and can be extremely important. It gives context and often information. If I see something in the background of an image that informs how I read the story, it's important. Photographers who are careful about what they include in terms of setting or what they exclude have a better chance at creating a stronger sense of story in the mind of the reader of those images. Something happens in stories. This change is what most people who argue against the ability of a photograph to tell a story seem to be very hung up on. But set aside for a moment that change can be captured in a photograph because we know that change has happened or is happening. The image may not show that change, but then a good horror movie doesn't have to show the monster all the time either. I'm not arguing that a photograph can tell a complete story. I'm arguing that a photograph can give us enough that our imaginations will fill in the gaps, and a photograph can very clearly show action about to happen, action having happened, or action happening. The Eddie Adams image of the Saigon execution is a great example of this, though not by far the only example. There are hundreds of thousands of great images that rely on something happening or imminent change, something about to happen to tell or imply a story. The Cartier-Bresson image behind the Gare Saint-Lazare is full of story. Man leaps over puddle, man falls into puddle, man gets wet. That's one possible story that we can tell ourselves from the many possible outcomes that Cartier-Bresson gave us in capturing this unresolved moment. You can split hairs here on whether the image tells the story or if it's just happening in the mind of the person reading the image. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in whether that implied story, the one in the imagination of the viewer, is set in motion by my photograph. If it connects with them, that makes a powerful photograph. If action or change occurs in a story, it happens because of conflict, and there's plenty of conflict in a still photograph, or there can be, though it might not be the kind you think when you hear the word conflict. There's conflict of ideas, and that's powerful. We often call it juxtaposition. Here, simple as it is, this is story. Living plants grow in the near waterless environment of the Sahara Desert. There's struggle implied here, and therefore story. Here, in a mosque in Srinagar, it's the conflict or the juxtaposition of the heavenward gaze of the faithful and the earthbound gaze of the distracted. Here again, the contrast or conflict or juxtaposition of modern and ancient. And once more, the contrast between predator and prey. These aren't exactly subtle contrasts, but I think they illustrate the principle well. And again, if you're out there thinking, yeah, but these don't really tell a full story, we are in agreement on that. I don't think it matters. They use the elements of storytelling to make a more engaging image, and that is what I'm interested in. There are other elements of story that I think matter, but I don't want to make this episode longer than it has to be. So I'll touch on two more. The first is theme. Stories are about something: love, vengeance, overcoming the impossible, misfortune, faith, etc. And if you can make your images about something more important, more universal, your images will be stronger. It doesn't have to be something huge. It can be about beauty, but really make it about beauty. Second, good stories don't tell it all. They leave room for mystery. What's that person looking at? What's about to happen? That engages our imagination, and our imaginations are powerful. The scariest movies don't show the monster right away. They allow our imaginations to do a much stronger job of scaring us than the movie itself could. Good storytellers cause questions to be raised. It's another way of provoking my curiosity and arousing my imagination and connecting me with the photograph. Make a photograph that raises questions. Make it about something that I care about, with characters that we can invest ourselves in emotionally, and with the possibility of change, with something happening, often through conflict or contrast. And you will have used the elements of storytelling to make stronger photographs. Yes, photographs can tell or imply a story. Photographs are their own medium. They'll do this in their own way with their own constraints. And no, not all photographs need to be story, but some do or can be. And if you can harness this and start thinking like a storyteller, you will hook me deeper and longer. And to me, that is the point. Okay, I promised some t-shirts to some of you, so here you go. I will be sending t-shirts to 3 randomly drawn people who left a comment on episode 65 of Vision is Better, and those people are Bob Denst, Arshdeep Matharu, and Stephanie Bishop. I'll make sure we connect with you and get this stuff out to you ASAP. If you like this show, please hit the like button and tell the world. If you're not subscribed, please do so. And finally, go in peace, knowing gear is good, but vision is better. We'll see you next time. Take care.